Thanks for joining us again for your bi-weekly Autumn Horizons session. As you know, my name is Issa White. I'm your program director for the Austin Urban Technology Movement. And I'm here to make sure we are sharing experiences, sharing opportunities, whether it be educational, job-related, or career development related, for you to go ahead and expand your horizon, essentially, on all things tech. So within the tech industry, as we know, right now we are trying to bridge that gap to make sure that the representation matches from the population, that it reflects into these major tech industries, or the tech industry in general. As you see here, Latino and Black community, respectively, is only represented 13, is not represented matching the 13 and 21%. That is, excuse me, 18 and 13%, I'm looking at it backwards. That is shown in the US population. So the idea is for us to increase the representation overall and making it a standard in terms of our communities that, you know, we are represented and seen in the tech industry. So what we're doing is we're bringing individuals like Quyen and Percy to share their experiences and how they were able to climb the ladder into the tech industry, and you know what they did in their particular experience that, you know, set them apart and help them, you know, be successful. They'll also be able to provide, you know, tips and tricks on, you know, things within that space, whether it be the communication or just overall, you know, they work in a life experience. So the idea, you know, it used to be in person, so we brought this platform to the virtual space when we had, you know, essentially, you know, COVID. Now that things are being a little lifted a little, we can probably bring it back to the in-person space. But for right now, we're able to reach out and connect with individuals all over the US and connect them to you in the virtual space. So without further ado, I'd like to first introduce Quyen. Both of our guests today are from Ethos, and I'm sure they're gonna explain that throughout their presentation. But feel free to, if you have any questions or comments, drop them in the chat, and I'll let Quyen go ahead and guide us.
Awesome. Thank you, Issa, and thank you everyone for joining Percy and myself today. So my name is Quyen. I lead recruiting here at Ethos. Ethos is an insurtech startup founded in 2016. So we're 5+ years old now. We're pretty new in the space, and we are making applying for life insurance digital, accessible, and fast. So if you've ever applied for any insurance process, there's paperwork, there's a lot of manual underwriting, there might be delays. Sometimes a commissioned agent will call you and tell you, hey, like, will you sign this policy? What do you need? So in general, it's been a very archaic process. And so we've turned that 180. Everything is online, accessible now that we expect things so instantaneously with Uber Eats, Amazon Prime, like we just want things as soon as possible. So that goes in with getting life insurance to protect your loved ones, your family members, in the case that something happens. So that's the company that Percy and I work for. We're based in San Francisco and in Austin. So sorry if you hear my dog, he will calm down eventually. But we are all remote as well. So excited to be doing this with the whole team and you all remotely, and hopefully we'll all do this in person when that time comes. So that's me and the company. And let's see, in terms of my background, so I was born in Australia. I moved to America about 15 years ago. So I'm 28. So I lived 13 years in Australia, 15 years in America. And I am here because I heard about Autumn from Black at Ethos, one of our ERGs here. So ERGs are employee resource groups. This is where we also get to learn about different activities, backgrounds, experiences, just like Autumn is providing for you all. And it's always nice to hear about different perspectives. So I'm here because here's a photo of my family, and as us at a Buddhist temple when we're celebrating Lunar New Year. I went to ATVing for the first time. I've hiked different mountains and summits. And so I think when you are involved in your community, whether it's work, social, family, it makes the journey much more satisfying and meaningful. And you can't overcome anything alone. That's why you have resources and different mentors you can rely on. And so I'm also here to learn about this program and how I can better shape my perspective in tech. And that comes with recruiting diverse candidates, thinking about not everyone gets a 4-year degree, or not everyone can afford to go to school. So how do we think about recruiting from boot camps or from different backgrounds, or having internships or apprenticeship programs? So that's why I'm here to speak with you all today. And next slide. So a quick recap of my background. So I moved here when I was 13. I went to high school in Southern California, and then I went to Cal State Fullerton for my bachelor's degree. I studied journalism, so I wanted to be a news anchor. That was something that I've always wanted to be a part of. I just thought it was great to tell everyone your morning news and get their day started and make sure that they had the news and resources for their day. In my last year at Fullerton, I interned with the Lakers. I'm a huge basketball fan. It was definitely a dream job to be there. That's me at the top of the Staples Center with the banners that we have. And I was working on public relations there. So this is where I was delivering statistics and making sure the reporters had all the numbers in place. So when you hear of, oh, like Steph Curry statistics, he's 3 for 3 from the line, that's the type of information that I was providing to all the broadcasters so that it was accurate. After that, I landed my first tech job out of college. It was a company called AirServe, and this was the time where a lot of mobile apps were monetizing. So if you've seen banners and annoying commercials in between your interactions with apps that you play with, that's app monetization. And so while I was there, I was working on account management. So if an app developer wanted to monetize, I would put together proposals and say, hey, like here is a banner, here's an advertisement you can use. And I would be the middle person in making sure that their monetization and their reporting structures were visible so they could see their performance. So that was my first role in tech. I definitely learned a lot just in terms of customer service, communication, as well as understanding how things come into play, whether it's with engineering, developers, marketing, account management. So it's a great way to get into AirServe. And then I've had a few other roles along the way, but I'm currently at Ethos. And so in terms of how I went from journalism to recruiter, I found that I like interviewing people. I love learning about their story. So asking questions like, what are you looking for in your next career? And trying to understand what they're looking for to say, hey, like I actually have a role here at Ethos that really fits what you're looking for. Like, let me try to make that connection. Let me walk you through the candidate process. And I'm kind of a shepherd as a recruiter. So I am there for every step of the way, all the way until the end. If they make it to the offer, that's what I currently do. So technical recruiting is very hands-on. I'd say a lot of my time is just spent getting to know the candidate in the same way that I'm getting to know the interviewee as a journalist. So a lot of that has transferred over to being a recruiter. So that's my journey so far. And then next page. So what do I like about my current role? So it's nice to have exposure to all the different departments that I work with. So as a recruiter, I'm speaking with candidates, I'm speaking with the person who's hiring for this role. I recruit for engineering, marketing, product, design. So I get to really understand Ethos and how it all comes together. So when Percy's on design, I'm hiring for a bird designer to work alongside with him. I'm also hiring for a researcher. And so it allows me to really get to know the people here that I'm working with very well. I love talking to candidates. Again, it's the story piece that gets me excited. People often share their passion, like you spend so many hours working. It has to be a huge part of your life where you want to make sure it's a role that you enjoy. The environment is there to help you grow. So I love seeing people be promoted or pivot in different directions. Career paths are not linear. Sometimes you are zigzagging and you are changing interest because who you are is fluid and you don't know what role you like until you're into it and you might want to try something new. So I love working on that piece with learning and development. The last thing I think I really enjoy is working on branding and guest speaking, such as this type of event today, because a lot of how I've discovered jobs is attending similar sessions. So I've done career fairs, I've looked at different sessions or technology companies that are hosting Q&As or get to know you sessions. And again, it makes me feel more connected with the community and the role that I'm working with. And we have a question pop up, so let me answer that. Do you have any experience with a recruiter? Tell us about it. So
That was
in terms,
that was just
sorry.
I was just in the class.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, Quinn. I don't
that's
want to be
okay.
confusing.
Okay,
That
no
was
worries.
something for the class to put any comments in the
Oh, got it.
chat there.
Yes, so please tell me about your experience with a recruiter, and I would love to learn more about that. So I'll leave that for you all to chime in. And then next slide. Next slide, I will hand it over to Percy. Percy is super awesome to work with. He is one of my hiring managers as well. So I've worked closely with him on building his own team, but I'll hand it over to Percy for his introduction.
That's great. Yeah, so pretty much I'm a brand designer at Ethos. Pretty much throughout my career, I've been a brand designer through and through. For those of you who just want to ask, like, what is brand design? High level, that's pretty much your advertising and like focusing materials like bus shelters, TV spots, anything that kind of represents the look and feel of a company. Feel free to ask in the chat, like any questions you have around brand design, and I'll be happy to kind of like answer that kind of like through and through. But high level, as far as like my background and like I became a speaker today, I also want to share the kind of wealth and share the perspectives that I've had been exposed to ever since I graduated college and moved to San Francisco. I grew up in Florida, pretty much grew up in Key West, and then went to the University of Florida in Central Florida. And it's been really refreshing just as I kind of grew up, becoming more exposed to all these different types of communities and different types of people from all sorts of backgrounds. And I think that's like one really refreshing aspect of one being creative and two just being in tech is the unexpected routes that some people take when they get into tech, and all the kind of like overlapping like experience and like narratives that kind of come with the territory. You can kind of go to the next slide. Oh, yeah.
Really quick, Percy, could you share a little bit more about brand design? We have some people that are interested in graphic design in this particular class. And so I would like to share, you know, how's that possibly related to brand design, or maybe you can share what is, you know, what's different about it.
Oh, yeah. So pretty much there's usually like within graphic design, like brand design and product design. Product design is very metric focused and all around the kind of like user experience of a product. Those examples being Spotify and all the kind of like mobile apps or like app experiences. When it comes to brand design, what I love about it is the kind of like intuitive experiences that come with that like industry. So being able to get creative with advertising when it comes to like paid social ads, say you might see like Instagram, Facebook, even like Twitter or TV commercials, trying to do storytelling around this specific like concept or this specific idea that over time, as you put out more advertisements, they kind of like coalesce into this like one grand idea that people can relate to. So you're just essentially putting out a series of stories that build on top of each other and become this one big like lore for a company. Kind of like how we kind of grow, and as we grow experiences, and with those experiences, we have all these kind of stories that we want to share and just tell our friends and whatnot. Brand design is pretty much that same way, but we do that visually. Yeah, usually with like marketing materials, but that can actually change along with tech as well. I know as far as like the more innovative kind of like ideas around brand design within tech, play around with very experimental technologies like VR and AR. 3D is another big thing that people have been exploring. I know as far like the creative side of things, NFTs are a major talking point. One for like personal like artists, but how does that kind of potentially build up with companies and brands specifically? Do you partner with those artists, or do brands belong in NFTs and like that whole entire like space as well? These are like really like interesting like conversations as well. So.
And just to clarify, if NFTs, those are, I don't know if anybody's familiar with, you know, blockchain and everything, or just the cyber world of money right now. But if you've seen different artists who put like the original picture of an album or something as an NFT, you could purchase that NFT and then sell it. And it's a new thing, so Tien, you can probably add some more details about NFTs. But to get back to your brand designing, so essentially, you know, you're the one creating the story behind some of these brands that are either newer or that are, you know, we call it rebranding themselves to make their stories more relevant. And I'm pretty sure you probably work with graphic designers, you know, to kind of make that story come to life, right?
Exactly.
Definitely. So,
yeah,
okay.
And then as far as that kind of like background and kind of like journey as a brand designer throughout, pretty much when I went to the University of Florida back in 2010 to 2014, I studied graphic design, and that graphic design program just really honed in on these kind of design fundamentals, these kind of key concepts around the fundamentals of like layouts, color, typography, all these elements of like design, whether it's like digital or print, that when you look at those like small kind of like elements, they become like these ingredients. And when you look at the nuances and are able to kind of tell the characteristics they bring to the table, you can kind of look at those ingredients and then just combine them to make a pretty distinct take on the story or like on this whole idea as far as like brand design. So yeah, imagine those design fundamentals being your ingredients, and then the design execution, the final thing you put out, whether it's a print advertisement like billboards or TV spots, or again, like paid social like advertisements that you might see on your newsfeed. These kind of like core like concepts or like those like, you know, recipes that just kind of come out. And then when I graduated from UF, I went and moved over to San Francisco, and I freelanced for a year, working with some nonprofits within the Bay Area, specifically the East Bay, and working under a boutique agency called Major Minor, whose core clients were these different nonprofits, also clients that were involved in the kind of like lifestyle industry, more specifically music. And that was like really interesting because as far as the storytelling there, you were working with different types of creatives within the music space and collaborating with them on what that story is and how it can be visually represented. And then as far as your nonprofits, you become more familiar with how the behind the scenes of companies in general work on these different types of like resourcing, which kind of coalesce into this really interesting experience that's really useful for kind of getting into tech, specifically startups, where when you dive into company, you're going in heads first and you're kind of being immersed in all these different perspectives from all these different departments that you'll collaborate with. My first tech job after I freelanced was Metromile, which is a pay-per-mile car insurance, where I worked closely with product design. I worked closely with the marketing team. I worked closely with the customer experience team and sales, pretty much all these different aspects of the company. And it became like really interesting because you get to see the day-to-day of each department and like each person under those departments, and you're being immersed and familiar enough to propose like solutions to better make their workflow easier, as well as making sure that what happens behind the scenes is also kind of being shared to the outside, as far as like consumers and people who might potentially be interested in like car insurance. Yeah, trying to think, because from there, what was like really interesting was going over to Lyft, which is a bigger company. And as far as like the creative storytelling there, as a brand designer, you have a lot more resources, and you have a lot more freedom to actually work with different designers in general, different creatives. So being able to work outside of the company and work with different artists in general was really, really interesting, especially when it comes to tech, where companies like Salesforce or LinkedIn, they might be more prone to do things in-house internally with the designers they have and not take creative risk or any type of risk that kind of nods to the kind of current events or culture that happens, you know, in the real world. But it was a different, refreshing experience being able to acknowledge things that go on within the world, share our perspectives on what's going on, whether or not it's polarizing. It stands true to the views and perspectives of the company itself, and just really being able to share that story. And last but not least, after Lyft, I went over to Ethos, where right now I'm also like helping tell the story of Ethos and share the perspectives that are going on with our company as far as things that happen within life, because we're a life insurance company and it's really important to share like what happens and acknowledge that, you know, while life is good, there are like really bad moments or moments that we wish didn't happen. But it's really important to really acknowledge that and like validate that those feelings that come with that territory really happen. So.
Isa had a good question for students in the chat. So students, do you want to share some examples of graphic design work you've been doing in class? What are some projects we've been doing?
Yes, you could go ahead, Percy. We can wait for some of those responses and then we can mention them when we see them.
Yeah, just go ahead and post in the chat, students, about that.
Yeah, would love to see it. I'm always like really interested in like other people's works and whatnot. So yeah, as far as like my current role at Ethos as a brand designer, I get to work with all different types of mediums. You have your kind of table stakes, the tried and true mediums that you expect as like advertisements. So digital ads, whether it's on Facebook again, whether it's on Instagram again, Twitter, sometimes LinkedIn, sometimes like those like little display ads, those little images that pop up within the website on the side. Another thing that happens is like this kind of ability to, again, just talk with different departments within the company and just really being able to see what's going on their side, because the way that they interact with customers or any kind of potential customers, it really allows me to look at the bigger picture and see, oh, if this is something that's happening on this side that only happens on this side, how can we kind of acknowledge that? How can we make a better experience for the customer? And how do we make or those story one that's really relatable to that customer, that really benefits that customer, and really kind of shares a long-term vision for how we reinvent life insurance. And then last but not least, I get to just grow the brand and just show like Ethos to the world and see how Ethos kind of presents itself over the future, whether it's the next few months, that next year, the next 5 years, etc.
And so before we do our assignment here, I have a question for both of you. So knowing that Ethos is a company that has benefited from what we call disruptive technologies. So, example, developing an app or using a chat bot, or, since the process for Ethos of getting insurance historically has been, like you said, a paper-driven process, in-person meetings and all that, you're essentially bypassing all of that and making it more accessible to more people with the use of technology. Can you explain how that impacted your individual roles?
Yeah, I can go first, if that's okay, Percy. Give you a breather.
Yeah.
I think it has made working here much more innovative, knowing that we can build things internally, that things can be very hands-on is really great for candidates in all the different aspects, because it gives them the ownership to oversee a certain area of the project. Like, for example, if I wanted to redesign the whole Ethos career website, that's something that I could do, or Percy could do. And we want to make sure that since our product is so innovative and technically focused, it gives them a chance to continue to grow in their tech careers as well. So since I oversee software engineers, a lot of our engineers who have come out of school, this is their first role, they really have the opportunity to be hands-on coding. They're not just doing testing or watching people build things. They have the chance to build it themselves, do some experimentation and testing, and making sure that they can learn from that. So I think having this disruptive technology allows us to be on the same learning curve where it hasn't been done before. So let's go and find the answer together versus sticking with status quo and sticking to paperwork and trying to fill out questions on a paper application. So that's how it's changed my role as a recruiter.
Yeah.
What about you, Percy?
Yeah, I'm trying to think, because as a brand designer, it just becomes a reminder of not being complacent, always trying to push the envelope, both as far as like the kind of work you do, just where you put it out there into the world, and then also internally, like how does that like overall like process look like? I know within Ethos we use Figma, which has been like really tremendous because it allows me and other designers within our design team to hop onto a project file and just collaborate real time on these different designs, especially when I'm collaborating with a product designer trying to insert brand moments into or kind of user experience when people are trying to get an estimate for their life insurance quote, or when someone really gets through and gets approved for a policy. Just how does that like congratulations look like? How do you really emphasize the kind of great feeling that happens when you get approved and you have this newfound like peace of mind? Yeah, I'm trying to think, because yeah, it really allows like that kind of like workflow as far as like Figma goes, like trying to figure out new ways of using that program. Before it was like real-time collaboration, alone, but now we're using for real-time collaboration within the design process, and also as like a virtual office space where we get to take an hour just to relax and unwind and just do like this brain dump of like silly memes or things to kind of like help lighten the kind of like workday, yeah, for an hour. And then outside of that, just taking a step back, seeing how people adjust just in general to like the kind of like day to day, and then just seeing, okay, like here's like the kind of new like patterns that happen with people's day to day that they start doing, and then figuring out within that like all these like new technologies. Okay, well, if they want to like have like a kind of like paper trail of like paperwork without actually having like the paperwork to fill out, whatever you use like AR to kind of help like verify things like driver's license or potentially credit cards, information where you can just kind of like autofill things. Yeah.
Thank you. And so I mentioned in the chat here that the term disruptive technology, on your own, I would like for you to look up what that means. To a lot of you, that's probably something that's, you would look up things and it probably seems normal. So like the use of chatbots could be, you know, something that seems normal to your everyday use, or using, you know, your apps on your phone to use, you know, to get on email, or to use to work for Word or a game. Those are all considered disruptive technologies. There are many of them out there that fall in the line of AI, for VR, for virtual reality, and all of that. But go ahead and take a look at some of those disruptive technologies, because those could be very well involved in the job that you are looking to obtain, or just in your life when it comes to using technology for some of these more traditional ways of doing business. And so for the assignment today, our presenters have come up with a assignment for you to use this opportunity to look up 5 people on LinkedIn who are in a position that you aspire to be in for 5 years. What does that journey look like, and what did they study? You can use this information then to discuss it on your next class for next week, next Wednesday, when we don't have our horizons. But I can show an example. If you have a LinkedIn page, you know, go ahead and get that signed up. Here's my LinkedIn page, and say 5 years, I'm going to shoot for the stars here, and I'm going to say, I already know. Initially, if you don't know, you know, what companies, you know, you could look up to kind of find the person. Let's say you want to, you know, work in, for me, particularly nonprofits, right? I don't know. There's nonprofits out there, and, you know, what positions come up, and let's say that they could list the CEOs of nonprofits. And so you can find roles that way. They'll list CEOs of nonprofits that are, you know, either in your area or across, you know, the US. I have mine already filtered for the US. But for me, since I know kind of what company I would like to work for, you can say like a company like United Way, right? Probably 2 words. United Way. And they have United Ways. There's definitely a D on there, all over the United States. And that way the United Way set up, it is, they work in, not silos, but they have their own organizations and leadership for each section, you know, the United States, whether it be city-based or state-based, depending on the size of the population. So let's say, for example, United Way CEO, right, for Austin. You can search it that way. Boom, David C. Smith. Actually, you should connect with him. You can send a note, add a note if you want to get personal to learn about his experience. But I'm going to go here and say, okay, let's look at his background. He's, you know, currently the CEO of United Way. It lists his current, his previous work experience. Depending on the person and how, you know, detailed they make their page, you can find actually a lot of information about some people, whether they list, you know, just roles that they had, you know, professionally, or if they decide to go into, like for him, his volunteer experience, which would be really relevant for those who are working in the nonprofit space to share what they're doing, you know, in the community. So he's been, you know, board chair, board members of different organizations within, you know, the Austin area, and different areas of arts and culture or education. and different causes. You can see their who their connections are and skills and endorsements they've gotten endorsed by other people they worked with or worked for. You can also, and here's an example of a recommendation, somebody who's worked with him who can you can vouch for his leadership abilities. They can list different talents or skill sets you have, whether it be accomplishments in language. They might list areas of tech or different skill sets they've obtained or different certifications they might have obtained, and then their particular interest. And so the idea is to find people like the David C. Smith. Now granted, I'm not going to be I'm not going to say I'm not going to be a CEO in 5 years, but just for the purpose of an example, looking up to somebody's role to kind of see how they made it there, because you never know, you might have some connections. It could very well be that David and I might have crossed paths. Now we have, because I've worked with United Way with Autumn and also with my previous job, but and I've met him in person. But if I had never met this person before, checking out their LinkedIn page to kind of see what our point of intersection might be in terms of our social groups, what interests we might have. I'm learning Spanish right now, so I can send a message saying, hey, I'm learning Spanish right now. I know you're the CEO of United Way. How does learning Spanish help you being a CEO? Just make that connection and start a conversation when you're ready to do that. But for right now, the activity is to identify 5 people like this to kind of help you set your path, because I know a lot of times we have goals and ambitions that we want to actually go and do and achieve, but in between that, you got to figure out how you get there, right? And so I think this is a perfect activity for you guys to identify those people on your path the next 5 years. If you want to be a graphic designer for Nickelodeon, I don't know, or if you want to start looking into different positions that might require some more tech skills or some more training or certifications in specific areas, you can find somebody who's in a position, see what areas of tech they were able to obtain or certifications or any ways to boost their resume, and see if what path does it look like for you. How do you go about obtaining those certifications? Some of them might be with us with Autumn, as I mentioned before, with the hard skills that we offer. You might want to connect with them, and if you are unsure if you're ready to start a conversation, with our soft skills, we can help you guide you through those kind of conversations and help you build your confidence to start those conversations. But any commentary, anything I missed, Percy and Quinn, on this activity?
Oh, that was great. I still do this all the time, because even though I'm in this role now, it doesn't mean I want to be in this role for 20 years. Like, I want to continue to grow. Like, if I wanted to be a director or a manager or a chief people officer one day, it helps me think, okay, like, I'm a recruiter now. What do I need to do to get to that next level? So this is something that we always do, even if we're still in this role that we have today. So it's exciting. I hope you all find great people to look at, see their journey. No journey is the same. You can see, like, some people study this and they go in like a completely different direction, and that's okay too. It's not always straightforward, but that's kind of the exciting thing about tech, where since we're moving to such a we've been in this digital movement for a while, that like anything is possible in tech. If you want to be a brand designer or a recruiter or someone in marketing or software engineering, like every department exists in tech. So I hope you all find 5 great profiles.
And definitely, I know we mentioned that, for example, for Percy, he started off studying graphic design when he was in college. And so I think it'd be a great idea for you guys, that are really focusing on the graphic design. I know somebody mentioned in the chat here one of their areas that they've used for graphic design. What was it? Adobe, I believe it was, Adobe Illustrator Basics. So, it might be a good conversation for you to have with Percy, saying, hey, I know how to use Adobe Illustrator. What other platforms or what other software do you think I should, be an expert in or touch up on? Or maybe in Adobe Illustrator, there's what ways were you able to use Adobe Illustrator when you were freelancing to kind of, make some money on the side, or, just anything. I think it's a good conversation to start by, matching with those or connecting with people on LinkedIn. If you don't have a LinkedIn page already, I highly advise that you create one. Although you might not be in your profession right now, LinkedIn it spans from college students to those who are not even college students, those who are just seeking to have a career, which is generally everybody. They create a LinkedIn page to start that network that I always mention, building your network and getting your name out there. It's a great space for learning space. A lot of people on LinkedIn are open to having conversations with people who, are aspiring to, accomplish some of the same things that they have. You'd be surprised, people are actually a little nicer on here than, walking to them on the street. So I would definitely advise that you get your questions out there. No, there's no such thing as a dumb question. And, ask, especially if it's something that you're passionate about and what, like to accomplish yourself. And sorry about the pointer, you guys. I don't know how to take it off. I think I pressed something when I was typing. But before we take it back to Autumn, is there any other questions, any other comments? I know we asked for you to share your experience with recruiters and your experience with graphic design in the chat. Please list those below, in the chat to make sure, we're able to share that information. Getting this information in front of people like Percy and Quyen is ideal, being that Quyen is a recruiter. She would be somebody you would be, interacting with, when it comes time to, looking for roles like under Ethos. And then Percy, is in the space of design, essentially for all, purposes of the word design. He's, studied the graphic design. You need all those skills in order to make a brand, in order to tell a story about a brand. So it starts with, the visual, then you gotta work on, as he said, all the different areas of design he studied to help him be a culmination of those talents. So this is a good time to connect with them, find them on LinkedIn, start with finding them on LinkedIn, that'll be easier. But any other questions before we wrap it up here?
First, I wanted to ask students if you have any questions at this time. Quyen or Percy?
Me, I actually have a question for Percy.
Okay. What's your question?
What would you say is the most difficult part of being a graphic designer?
That's a good question. I think sometimes, depending on like who you collaborate with, some people don't have experience collaborating with creatives, and when you're collaborating with someone as a graphic designer, you're really trying to problem solve and come up with a solution to a challenge or a problem that's usually around communication. So I would say, for example, is how do you break down the kind of like barriers of life insurance, or like these kind of like misconceptions that people have around life insurance. And let's say that I'm working with someone on the marketing team, and they've never worked with a graphic designer before. They might be a little bit descriptive about solutions with this kind of like notion that there's a specific solution to the problem, where there's multiple solutions that work on some scale. So I think the biggest challenge as a graphic designer isn't necessarily the like execution and like coming up with the visuals behind design. Is actually like having the design solve a solution for a specific problem, and making sure that as you collaborate with the whoever you're collaborating with, that they see your perspective and you see their perspective, and at the end, everyone is on board with the solution that they really feel confident, great about, that also happens to look really great. So, yeah.
Other students, questions? That was a great question, Diana.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Sometimes it's not even actually doing the job that's difficult. It's, making sure that everybody's on the same page, or the humans that you're connecting with is the most difficult part. Any other questions, comments, experiences that you'd like to share?
I have one question. So all the students are working on Adobe Illustrator right now and learning some kind of graphic design concepts. What would be some other things they should look into learning if they want to get into the tech industry and use those design skills?
I might be biased because I use it a lot in my day-to-day, but Figma is another software that people should look into. I know they have a free plan, so you can actually like browse around and make an account using your Google account or using like whatever email you want. And then you can just kind of play around with it. I think the real benefit of that is just the collaboration, being able to go into a file and then sharing it with other people, whether they're designers or non-designers. So you can have them go into that file. And if you want to design something like real time and collaborate on something real time, you can just, yeah, like share that link with them. And then just work on the design together. Also, that being said, I know that Figma actually has this kind of free 2-day conference called Config. I believe it's next week, like next Wednesday or Thursday. If it's not next week, it's the week after. But it's completely free to sign up for. It's all virtual, and they have really amazing like speakers who come from like all different backgrounds, whether it's tech, whether it's just a creative agency. But yeah, that's also like a really great resource that I would recommend as you also learn Adobe Illustrator and all the kinds of ins and outs of that. So.
Awesome, thank you. And students, I just posted in the chat the link for that conference. So maybe we'll look at who is speaking during our class and tune into one of those. Yeah, thanks for Percy for that info. Any other questions, students?
Quinn, do you have any, as a recruiter, do you have any, I guess, suggestions for those who are looking for positions, maybe if they're on LinkedIn, the best way to kind of approach a recruiter about a position they might be interested in?
Yeah, I would say you can always send out messages, because if you don't shoot your shot, you might not get that opportunity. So feel free to send the messages. If they respond, great. If they don't, like, that's okay. There's millions of people on LinkedIn for you to reach out to. So I think the more you put yourself out there, the more knowledge you'll gain. And you don't have to be a working professional to be on LinkedIn. You can be a student, which we all are, and have that profile. So I would say that is something really key. It could also be informational. It's like, hey, I noticed that you're in this position. Like, can I pick your brain for 15 minutes? I just want to learn more about what you do and how you got there. So I would say putting yourself out there is going to be really helpful if you want to learn more about someone's role in their industry.
Yeah.
Totally. All right, last call for questions from students. Don't be shy.
Y'all know I'm a talker, so I have plenty to say, so I wanted to get it out now. Well, as you know, there's our app. I sent out a blast of some more courses we just launched. We have a partnership with Grow with Google, and so they just dropped some UX design courses that are self-guided through Coursera, project management, data analytics, excuse me. And we already had the IT support and also IT support automation with Python. So if you're interested in those courses, I'll definitely take advantage of those. I want to take advantage of those and use them as well. Personally, just have to find the time to do it. But if you have, 2 hours a day, every day during the week, you could finish the course, between 4 and 5 months, depending on which course you select. So definitely check that out. Also check out our app for the emerging technology section under Exposure. If you're not sure what areas of technology you want to pursue, we have information there for you to learn about the position. As you know, actual position you could take on, or just learning about that area of technology in general. So make sure you check that area out as well.